Hello builders, my name is G. Next.js has really emerged to be, in my opinion, the most kind of beginner-friendly framework that exists for us to be able to build web applications. And, I think that it's really appealing to new developers and for people who don't want to get into the weeds of learning how to program too intensely and be able to just get some form of MVP out there. I think that that's something that Next.js is well suited to. I can't speak to running large enterprise systems, but at least for an MVP and early V1, it's been working out well for me. And so what I really want to do with this video is to basically create the starting points of integrating Next.js with Hano, with NeonDB, Drizzle, and a bunch of other services to be able to create the starting points of a full stack app that hopefully by the end of this video you can use to customize and add more features to be able to build your own project. Hopefully you can come back, reference this tutorial for Next.js 15 and be able to take this and, use it as the starting point of any project that you have. We'll also be adding at the end here a way to deploy to Vercel this basic starter app so that you can, as you're building, basically, as soon as you update something, be able to push it live to production so that, fast, iterative development process, get it out there, get it to users, and win. So, hopefully you get a lot of value out of it. If you do, drop a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you want to see more videos like this. Every little bit helps. Let's jump straight into the code. A great place to start with Next.js is obviously its documentation. I'm going to be using very specific parts of it, but if you wanted to deep dive and learn more about Next.js and get more explanations to some of the things that pop up in this tutorial, feel free to go to the documentations. Link will be in the description. What I'm going to be worrying about is just installation here. So we're going to use this command here. So we're just going to copy this, go into our terminal of choice. I use WSL because I'm a contrarian. So here we have npx create next app at latest, and I'm just going to name our project here. We're just going to call it starting point because that's what we're going to be trying to do here. Let it run. It's going to ask us a few questions. I definitely recommend everybody use TypeScript. Takes out a lot of errors, saves a lot of newbies, including myself. And so, I would highly recommend using TypeScript. Then ESLint, it's a linter, so, being able to provide, we'll see it later when we do like some building and that type of stuff. Just being able to catch some design errors or some programmatic errors. That's what the purpose of ESLint is. Tailwind CSS. So you could futz with .css files. I actually prefer the inline Tailwind styling instead. I definitely recommend, again, everybody who's new, use it. Hit yes. So basically to the rest of it, have everything in the source directory. We're going to be using Auth.js. I'd recommend things go inside of the source directory. I accidentally hit enter a couple of extra times here. App router, I definitely recommend that over page router. App router is a lot easier to use, and so we're going to be going more into app router later on in the project, but I definitely recommend that you use that. I've never heard of TurboPack, so I'm just going to hit no on that. Import alias, so we're going to be using shadcn. Best if we just use @ by default, so we're not going to change anything of that, so that's no. Again, haven't touched anything. Now, sometimes in this kind of installation portion here, it does get hung up. If I'm kind of stalling to see if it actually gets hung up. If it ever gets frozen, just hit Control-C. It'll cancel out of it, but starting point will be created, and you can just do npm install. So you can see there, it got hung up there. You can just cancel out of it, right? Control-C. There, go into our starting point, cd starting point here to go inside of it. You'll see that there's some stuff in here, but node modules installation has been interrupted. What we can do is do rm.rf. Make sure you write this command exactly, rm-rf node modules. What that will do is just delete your node modules. So if we hit ls, you can see node modules where it was between these two files no longer exists. And all we're going to do is just npm I. That's going to install our node modules. Basically, sometimes that installation command gets hung up on stuff. You just hit Control C. You can see this npm I is a lot faster. And we'll just, everything pretty much works from there. So we can do code dot to just open it up in VS Code. Obviously, you can just do it from a regular file search. Once we open it up there, we can see some of our page.tsx code here. We're just going to run a command here, npm run dev, and that will run our server. You're going to see that the URL given here, let me just expand this so it's bigger, goes to http://localhost 3000. So you can't share this URL to other people. They can't access the code that you've written in this particular format. We're just running a developer server on our own computer so that we can run it on our own machine. Can't be shareable via the internet. Not yet. You're going to need Vercel for that later. But what we can do is just go to this localhost 3000 and on our own computer see the app that we've created. So this is some some beginner Next.js code here. We're not going to be using too much of this for the most part. We're actually going to get rid of it. But it lets us see that everything has installed correctly. So if you need to learn a little bit more about the installation, what are all these individual parts and pieces, if you wanted to manually install this for whatever reason, I just highly recommend you do the automatic installation. But if you wanted to learn more, the documentation, it will be in the link to the documentation will be in the description. So feel free to go and check that out. Just going real quick before we move on to some of the other pieces, I'll just go over some of the different components here, or files, or directories here. You have a public, has a bunch of different pictures in here. Usually I just get rid of all of them. Not really something that's needed, but if you ever needed any pictures that you're going to put on your website, stick them into your public folder. You can reference them in there from this little source here. So you can see next.svg. They're just using this image here. You can see that it's stored in SVG format, not in like a PNG or JPEG. If you have an SVG, that's obviously a lot better, but you can just put in base PNGs, and inside of our localhost here, you can see that Next.js, that's from this logo here in the SVG. So we asked for a source directory. That's going to become important later. In the past, I used to just use app, but when using node modules, a lot easier to, not node modules, using Auth.js, it's a lot easier to have this extra source file. Inside of our app, we have some fonts. I usually don't care about these fonts, so I usually get rid of them. We'll do that later. You have your layout.tsx. We're going to use that if we ever add modals. So any pop-ups, we're going to put that on the top level here in the layout. But other than that, any providers that we might have, we might add to this layout.js or .tsx. It basically just controls most of our entire project. We also have on the top tab here, create next app, and the description. If we go back to this, you can see create next app being up here. And if there was a little description, like if you sent a link to a friend, you might see like a little description text that appears underneath the title of the website. That's just what's stored within this description field. So those are the things that control there, and obviously in your page, it's just all of the particular code that controls the layout of this homepage, or this base page, really. The reason that we use app router is that if we created something called a login folder here, then, and let's just create a page.tsx here, do const login page. And I like using arrow functions. Feel free to just use regular functions like how they do here. It's just that I personally like this arrow function more than this export default function look. It's personal preference, really. So let's just add here landing page here. Make sure everything's make sure everything's export defaulted as well. Login page there. We just added a login page. So if we do /login here, you can see we have landing page here at the top left. Wonderful. And you can see that just by adding this folder here, we now have this extra URL route. So when we want to switch from here to home, and let's create that really quick. Whoops, not folder. Folder, not file. Home, right? We can do pretty much the same things. Actually, I'll just write it from scratch. Probably faster. Page.tsx here. We're going to do const home page here. Do another arrow function. Return. There we go. Thank you, Copilot. Creating our home page here. If we go to /home, enter, we can see once it runs. Oh, whoops, forgot the export default. There we go. And if we save that, we have home page here at the top left. Great. Cool. So let's move on to adding a little bit more richer UI than just text here. Now we're going to be adding in shadcn. So what is shadcn UI? You can see here on the screen there are a bunch of examples of different blocks of code that have been created from components that were provided by shadcn. So this is basically a bunch of pre-made components, whether it be these buttons, this chart, this table, these inputs, all of this stuff here is already pre-made. We can see an exhaustive list, whether accordion, Allen, alert, badge, calendar, card, etc., etc. The list goes on. There's a lot of really great pre-made components here that we can just reuse instead of having to make new ones. For most part, most people are not the type of 10x designer, 10x engineer to be able to implement a lot of really nifty custom UI. So look, a lot of these components are pretty much, above average, I would like to say, if not some of the best components that are out there. And you can try to make your own, and certainly I've tried. A lot of them don't match the quality that you'll see here. So why not we just cut to the chase, use what is probably the best that's out there, that's available, and just be able to build our projects faster and easier. We all like to do that, right? So to get shadcn into our project, we're going to go to the documentation here. We're going to go under installation. We're going to choose Next.js, which is what we're going to be using. And I'm actually filming this while the Next.js 15 and React 19 upgrades are currently ongoing. It's actually a pretty good opportunity to kind of show some peculiar situations that are going to arise just because of these upgrades. I'm sure there's going to be some when React 20 and Next.js 16 start coming out, but we'll solve them. We'll go through these issues, and hopefully you'll be able to use it when the next upgrade happens. So we're just going to paste in our command into our terminal here, npx shadcn at latest init. It's going to ask which style we want to use. So there's New York and default here. Let me see if I can find, I believe it's under themes here. Yeah. So, actually under blocks. Where would that, oh no, here it is. Okay. So under the components here, you can see that we can see different styles, and listed out here, there's New York and default. And the main basic thing that I've really seen between New York and default is there is a size difference, so default's a little bit larger, and there's more padding between items. You can see like New York, it's a little bit more compact and a little bit smaller. So, it depends on which one you really like. A lot of it, I think, is personal preference between New York and default. Also, like with New York, it's good that I showed the badge, actually. That's another good note, that the curves on corners are less pronounced underneath under New York as opposed to default, right? So if you just think about like the layout of the map of like New York and how New York City is like, just think about that compared to default being like a suburban map, right? A little bit wider, roads curvier than in a, square grid system that would be seen in New York. So let's install let's continue. Let's just choose New York. There's a bunch of colors that we can use. So if we go back to here, you can browse and see what the different colors look like. They offer some here: gray, zinc, stone, slate. I'm just going to use neutral, which is black and white. This is just a yes. We want to use the CSS variables for theming. Just going to install that. This is the peculiar area that we're going to see here just because of the upgrades with React 19 here. we can actually go to this website here where they're talking about all the different things here. Almost everything at the time of this recording is pretty much up to date. It's just the React icons that are not yet. Seems like that's still in progress with a PR. So we're just going to go use -- force. Honestly, you could have done npx shadcn at latest init -- force. Would have been the same, but I just wanted to show the fact that they're mentioning that some things are failing with the upgrade React 18 to 19, and we can just do use -- force here. Pretty much everything works. I tried it on a bunch of different projects already, and doesn't seem to have any major impacts. So just do force and get things going. You might see in a bunch of different packages that we're going to install today, there are going to be some problems with this. Just remember, I'm going to be using -- force. If everything is updated to the React 19 standard, then, you know, we won't have to do the -- force. But in the future, when we hit, you know, React 20, 21, etc., might come a time for us to need to do that force. So if you just see that error, you know, just know that that's not typical. It's just what's going on in every upgrade cycle. So now that we've installed shadcn UI, let me just close down public here and just clear everything up. What it added was this library file, shortened to lib, and in there it has a util, this cn function. It allows for conditional theming, styling, and we'll be using it a little bit later, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but just wanted to let you know that when you just do the shadcn init, all it's adding is this utils for now. What we need to do is select which components we want and then install them. And so if we just go back to here, go to components, there's some major components that every project probably needs. One of them is this button, pretty standard, typical here. And there are a bunch of different styles to the buttons. We'll take a look at them as soon as we install it. So we'll just copy this command here. We're using npm, and we're just going to paste this in and let it install. And again, we have this -- force issue. We're just going to use it. And now we have it in there. You can see that it added this components folder here with an extra UI folder nested underneath it. If you ever want to create your own components, you can do that. You can do it at the components level. I would prefer, my personal preference, not to add anything to UI. So I separate out what are shadcn components versus what's in components. And so if we look at button, there's a bunch of different things in here, but there's some configurations that we can deal with. So if we go back to the documentation here, you can see they talk about different styles, right? So this is the primary button, secondary button. If you want to make your button look destructive, like a delete button, that's an option there. An outline. Ghost, meaning there is no look of a button until you hover over it. A link with a little underline there. An icon, if you, like they show in the example here, use from Lucid React, which is automatically installed with shadcn. If you want to add a little icon to the button, that's how you can do it there, with a little outline on the outside. You can do text and icon, so you can see there that they have this icon here, and then just add a little piece of text alongside it. You can do that. A little animated spinning icon there, if you'd like. And so for the most part, right, we have a lot of different potential options inside of the code here. You can change any of them if you'd like. This uses Tailwind CSS, so if you need to, just try to find yourself a little Tailwind style cheat sheet. We do Tailwind cheat sheet here. Let's see, this one right here. I'll link it in the description down below once this actually loads. This is not a, the Tailwind CSS cheatsheet.com. You can see just a bunch of different, ways to basically alias CSS and be able to do it inline, and in my opinion, a simpler way than, writing out a whole CSS file and all that type of stuff. I think that it's a lot simpler to just write border B0 instead of writing border bottom width 0px. It's up to you. I prefer Tailwind instead, and that's what we're going to be using for the rest of this tutorial. Awesome. So we've created the button here. Let me just recreate one of the examples. Why don't we just create a quick login? And I think that would probably be a good example to showcase, right? We have our buttons here. We have a couple of inputs that are needed in another button. So we're just going to add in here input. So this is a little text input here that you can type some stuff in. So we're just going to copy that. And for right now, we're just going to be worrying about UI, no functionality just yet. So when I add this, we are not going to worry about some of the backend stuff right now. We're just going to go into our login and this login page here. And so let's think about, if we want to copy this here specifically. Oh, another thing that we can add here is to add in card. So you can see here there's this little outline here, and I believe that the thing that they're using to achieve this outline is this card component here. So you can see this is how to use it. I'll just implement it, and so that we don't have to look at that example specifically. So now that we have it installed, what we're going to do is just pull in card here, @components UI card, and then we're going to do card content here. Let's do card title and just say log in with your credentials. Actually, what did they write in their little example there? We'll do it the same way. Okay, so just create an account. Create an account. And actually, what we can do, if we really want to mirror what they have here, we can do card header here. Put this title inside, and then have card description here. Enter your email below to create your account. We'll just paste that in there. Let's see what it looks like so far when we go over to login. Right. Oh, sorry. I forgot to run the server. So npm run dev here. Okay, it's running. So now we can refresh this. It's compiling login. There we go. So we have our button, and it appears to fill the entire screen. One of the things by default, and I'm not 100% sure why they do this, but every single time you start a project, you have to do head, body, and then add in height of 100%. For whatever reason, I'm not 100% sure why they force us to do that every single time, but it's just a requirement. We're going to add this card back in here and sandwich it between this div. We're going to do class name, so we're going to add in some Tailwind styling. Flex, height, full, items, center, justify, center, and width dash full. So the goal is to be able to put this card into the center. And let me just make this card class name width of, let's say 50% looks nice. And, the height will just be however much stuff is in it. Okay, that looks pretty good. It doesn't seem for some reason that this is centered. So let's see what's going on there. Let me check this out real quick. All right, I found my issue. It's inside of this globals.css. Forgot we have to do :root here. And I believe if we save that, yep, you can see that it is now centered vertically. The entire thing now takes up the whole length or whole part of the screen here. So that's great. We can do BG black, so black background, and then text white, and I believe that'll invert the colors there. So that's good, just to kind of follow what they're doing here. We're going to have a row with 2 buttons here, so we're just going to add that in. We're going to do a div here. We're going to do class name, flex row. So the way that we get a row of items, we're going to do justify, if I can spell correctly, justify between. The 2 buttons are separated horizontally from each other. We're going to do width dash full, and then we're going to just add in a bit of padding on either side. So in the X, we'll just do padding of 10. If you hover over it, you can see that's 40 pixels. So we'll see if that looks right. We'll just do it in a second. Let's import in our button at /components/UI/button. There. How did they do their button in this? I think it's an outline. Okay, so we're going to do variant of outline there. And inside of this, we have the GitHub. I believe that GitHub icon was first. Do they not have it? I see. Okay, so for some reason it seems to be deprecated in React. So what we're going to do is install, and so we got to shut down our server to install this. npm I react-icons here. All right. So Lucid React unfortunately doesn't seem to have a GitHub icon, so I'm just going to use it from. Let's see here. Do they have that? What was the? Okay, I'll give me 1 second to find it. Okay, so unlike in Lucid React, they call it FA GitHub, I believe. And we can choose between FA and FA6. Let's just try each one of them and see if which one looks best to us. So we'll just write GitHub here. So this is just the FA version. Oh, whoops. Did that not? Why is that not rendering? Oh, it's because I'm not running the server. Silly. So npm run div. Let's see here. And I gotta refresh this. And let's see how that looks. Okay, not the best, but we can see there's the GitHub logo there. I think I like FA as opposed to the other. Let's see here. Might have to do class name. I think it would be text of white. Let's see if that helps. Or sorry, not text white, text black inside of this button. Good. All right. I don't know if I. Okay, so it's because the width is really big. Let me see if I just do this. Let's see. Okay, great. And then there's the padding left of 10, which is a little bit awkward. So let's shorten that to 2. Or maybe let's try to make it in line with the text here. I think that's what they do. Yeah. So, is that about in line? Maybe there is no padding on either side. Okay. Yeah, there we go. All right, cool. So that's there. We can just copy. Whoops, not the whole thing. Copy just the button. Add that in here. And we do FA Google. Just to grab that icon. Write Google. And there we go. We have the two buttons. They're justified between. Maybe that's not what I necessarily like. Maybe a gap X of 2. Let's see if that looks better. Yes, but I'd like for it to take up the whole width of this. Maybe justify. Maybe justify between. And then width of full. Does that help? Yep. Okay. We'll do that. And then maybe just do a gap X of 1. And that should look, maybe they have a little bit more of a gap. 2. Does 2 look right? Like 4. Yeah, okay. That kind of looks the same as this. Now, obviously, I could do outline, actually. Variant of outline for the button. Oh, actually, I did. Weird. Why is this? Is it because it's in the button that it says, like, BG background? Interesting. So it matches this white background. So that's the reason there. So we can override it if we want by doing, like, BG black and removing this text black if you wanted it to look like this, which might mirror more of what they have here in this example. So let me do that just to make it look consistent with the example. Cool. So there's that. All right. So we've kind of gotten this top part here. Maybe theirs is a little bit bigger. I can zoom it in. make it look about the same size. Then next we're going to need to do this continue with. The way that we can do that is by adding in, going into this components here, the separator. This little line here that they've added in here, so we'll just grab this command here. Also, if you don't want to stop the server to be able to do that, you can just go into here and inside of the same directory in a separate terminal window, install this while leaving your server running. So cool, we have our separator in here. You can check to make sure that it's installed because it's inside of our component/UI there. Okay, now that we have the separator, we can build the little row that goes underneath the GitHub and Google buttons. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do a div. We're going to do something similar and create another row here. We're going to do flex dash row. Gap x of 2, margin bottom of 2, width of full. So we'll have everything positioned within our row there. Let's do separator. I'm grabbing that from @/components, and let me just reorder these to make it look right there. Let's do class name width of full here. And then we'll do a span. Class name text small. And then just do or continue. Because I think that was in the example. Let's see there. Or continue with. And then we'll do another separator. So let's see how this looks right now. I'm anticipating an issue, but let's just see. Maybe it happens to work. Nope. So exactly what I thought. Obviously, when we do with full, it's going to extend the full way there. Full width of what this thing is going to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to just add in a width of 350 pixels here. And let's see if that fixes it. It did not. Let me check on this real quick. Okay, so I figured it out. So instead of doing width of full here, let's just do width of like 50 pixels. And so that'll probably be good enough on either side. Great. We just need to make sure everything is centered vertically and horizontally. So we'll just add in items center justify center. When we do that, everything's going to be aligned. I think maybe we need a little space between the two buttons here, so we'll add a little bit of margin here. Did that not do it? Oh, the wrong one. Let's put it here in this row. There we go. So we have a little bit more space there. Honestly, instead of just doing these margin bottoms over and over and over again, well, maybe we can extend the gap here to be a 4. Okay, so that should be about the same. Just refresh, make sure everything's fine. Great. Next up, we need these inputs. And so we've already installed input. And so, yeah, let's just add them. Obviously, they're not going to work because we're not really too worried about the backend for now. But in the future, you know, you can use the inside of shadcn here, you can use the form component, and there's a whole long diatribe about form here, and you can add in, you know, all the little bits here and connect them to this, or put them inside of this form component. That'll be probably for a different day, and honestly, I do it a lot in my tutorials, so maybe that'll be your cue to, if you want to learn more, check out some of my other tutorials. So here, we're going to do a column, nested column. Just do gap y of 2, width of full here. I don't know why this is here. Does that change anything? Nope, I don't think it does. Now we're going to add in a quick h1 and just do email. I think that's how they put it. Yep, email, and then a little placeholder inside of the input. So let's do import, pulling that from @components UI. And so placeholder, enter your email. They have m@example.com. We can just do the same, m@example.com type of email. So then when we go in there, we can see that. That looks great. And then we're just going to copy paste this thing to do this again. We don't need this type of email. Do they have type of password? They do. There we go. And then leave this placeholder empty. And obviously there's some on change and on click stuff, but we're not gonna worry about that. Just want to get the UI layout working right. And so there we have email, we have password. Great. And then inside of this last column, we're just gonna add in another button. Class name BG, what do they have it? Oh, BG of white. So let's see, width of full, and what do they say? Create account. Sorry, I'm just flashing through different screens just to look. So let's see this. Okay, so we need to do BG of white, and we need to change our text to be black. So there we go. And the on hovers. So we need to do hover, probably BG slate of 300, make it a little bit darker, but not that dark. And then hover text white. Let's see if that doesn't look too jarring. I think we can keep it with text black, but just make this just a slighter, maybe 200. Let's try that. Yeah, I think that looks a little bit better. And then we need to add a little bit more spacing. So we'll do 4. I don't know if I like that. I'll do 2 here, and then just do a margin top of 2 here. And there we go. Everything looks about the same between their component and mine. You be the judge. Let me know in the comments if you thought I was successful or not. Maybe the separators, I can add a little bit extra there. Like 100 here and 100 here. Oh, all right. Maybe 75. Looks good. And let's just see with a bunch of different sizes. All looks good. So you can see as I zoom in, zoom out, it all looks fine. So there we go. We've created our first UI elements using shadcn UI. For this quick starting point, we're just going to be worrying about authorization with GitHub and Google. So I'm actually going to comment this portion out. But later on, when you get your hands on the sample code, feel free to uncomment this out and implement email and password if you'd like. Just for this tutorial's sake, we're just going to deal with easier OAuth ones. If you want to learn more about using JWT templates or tokens and how to implement your own email, password, and user sessions, check out my tutorials, because some of the tutorials will use JWT when we need the user session, but otherwise, for the most part, I would recommend for people who are building MVPs and earlier on products, just leverage the fact that bigger companies like GitHub and Google have already implemented authorization and just piggyback off of their work. You don't want to save emails and passwords and then have like a little cybersecurity oopsie wreck your project and startup before it can even get going. So let's be safe and try to use GitHub and Google for those. All right, that looks like we've done a pretty good introduction to shadcn here. Actually, I should keep these. And so we'll move on to the next step. So I think a good thing to transition to after working on our login is to actually implement full-on authorization. So I think that there are a lot of really great services out there like Clerk and Okta, which provide some of these auth services, but for fledgling products and stuff that you're building for an MVP, I think that Auth.js works perfectly fine. It's free. You don't have to worry about any future payments popping up randomly. And honestly, I think it's decently scalable for most of the projects that I've worked on to date anyways, and so we're going to use it for the starting point. We are using Next.js, so let's select that. We can install it by just copying this command here, going back into our project here. Actually, let's go into let's go into our project here. Let's turn off our server. Let's paste this command here, install it. While that is working, we can go back over to the documentation here, and we need to set up environment variables. And so we're going to copy this command here. It's going to automatically set it up for us when we do this. So if you notice down here, let me just collapse this, a .environment.local file was just created for us, and inside you'll see that it automatically generated a auth secret for us. If you want to learn more, you can go to the documentations and understand what that does. Next, we're going to need to create some extra files. This is the reason why I had us build or add in the extra source file instead of just sticking everything within an app file. Given that we need to put auth.ts at the root of our project, we can have a root that's separated from our code in our app. So what we can do is just do auth.ts here instead of having auth.ts sit with our CSS or layouts, page, etc., etc. We can just have it here at the source file level and have that be our root. So let's save this, and then let me close every other file except for our auth, so you can just pay attention to this. We're going to copy this bit of code here. We're going to paste it in here. I'm going to remove this for now because we're going to be adding some stuff to it later, and having the arrow will remember me to put it back there. We need to add a route handler underneath this complicated location. So let's go into our app. We need to create a new folder, add an API, and inside of API we need to add auth, a catch-all route URL here, and then route.ts. So we're going to do that. Whoops. We're going to add folder auth. We're going to do a catch-all for NextAuth, and then we're going to create a file called route.ts. So we have four levels of folders here. So we have app, API, auth, and then this left bracket, NextAuth, right bracket, and inside of that we have route.ts. We're just going to copy this bit here, paste it into this routes.ts here, and then lastly we need to add in a middleware file. So at our source, let me close it, just collapse it so that you can be aware of where it goes. Middleware.ts at the same level as auth.ts. We're going to paste this in. Great. So now we have access to middleware that we can use later on within the project. Let's see here. Now, because I want to get connections to Google and GitHub and just leverage their authorization service, we're going to use their OAuth. And these are the popular ones, and so we're going to use set up each one. So we have Google here, and so there's a bunch of pieces of information here. We need to set up a Google developers account, and so let's go to that website real quick. Here we go. So this is my personal Google Cloud console. When you come up to here, you're not going to see a lot of this stuff. So what you're going to do is need to create a new project. So up here, it'll either say create a new project, or if you have an existing project, just click on it, add new project up here, right? You're going to need to create a project name. And so in this case, we're just going to call it starting point, and we're going to create, and it's going to be creating for a second there. Cool. And now we're going to select this project to be our active project. Go into API services, credentials here. Then we're going to need to create credentials, and we're going to need to create an OAuth client ID. All right, first we need to configure our consent screen. It will be so we're going to do external here. I don't think that a lot of this stuff necessarily matters, but what we're going to do is add in an app name. We're just going to call it starting, actually capitalize starting point. You can add whatever app name in the future that you want. We're just providing that there, whatever your email is that you're using for the project. You can use that for your user support email. Do not add in an app logo for an MVP or an early project. Later on, feel free to do so. But when you upload an app logo, your app undergoes like a little verification and check process. It takes a long time. It's a lot of hassle. Not really necessary. You don't need an app logo. And so this is only like a blocker for your project. So just leave it blank. Don't upload a logo. I've had to wait a long time for Google to, a lot of back and forth. So sparing you some issues. We're going to work on that stuff there. We need an authorized domain. So for right now, since we're just working on our own local computer, we have http://localhost 3000. When you actually have a domain connected to your project, you can go back and you can change it. Or what I personally like to do is keep this localhost 3000 so I continue being able to develop it on the dev side, but then add a new domain with that domain, and you can have multiple of those. And so, honestly, it just works better that way, instead of just creating a whole new project between dev and prod. After our origin here, this is what they're talking about with this callback URL. So in the side of this authorized domains, we're going to need to add in this bit here. And so it is telling us not to include this. So I'm going to remove this real quick. Just do localhost 3000. Is that not working? Let me delete this, add, and then paste that in. Must not specify scheme. Why is this wrong? Okay, let me check on this real quick, and I'll be right back. Okay, so oops, I got a little ahead of myself. This authorized domain is not for here. Leave that blank. We're going to be adding in that callback URL in a different place, so my apologies there. You're going to add in your developer contact information here, save and continue. We're just going to skip through the rest of this because it's not needed. And so we're just going to go back to the dashboard, go over to credentials. We need to create now our OAuth client ID. Application is web application. And then this is where you would add in that http://localhost 3000, and then add in this bit here. So we're going to paste that in there. And then we're going to create. And there we go. Now we have a client ID and a client secret. And I'm going to get rid of this project, so don't worry about having these client IDs public. But we're going to have auth Google ID here. So we're going to add that into our environment local. So we're going to do that. And we're going to take it directly from our Google dashboard here. So we're going to copy this, paste it into here, and we're going to copy the secret, and I'll just type in this part, auth, and make sure that you spell this correctly, Google secret, otherwise your application's not going to be able to find it. Make sure auth, all capitalized, underscore Google underscore ID, and auth underscore Google underscore secret. So it's exactly how they specify it here. Auth.js will automatically pick up these, right? But if you spell it in a different way, then you're going to have to specify it differently. And I really have not found a reason to change the name of it. So, just use their default names. Cool. Next, we need to set up the providers here, but we're going to do that in a little bit after we've set up our database, because I think that, well, okay. So you can remember when I removed this object with providers in Google, we can obviously do that. Actually, no, I'm gonna set up the database before I fully share everything. So let's move on to doing GitHub next. And so we need to go into our GitHub project or dashboard here, and then we're going to go into our settings. All right, and underneath our settings, we're going to go all the way down to the bottom here for developer settings. We are going to go under OAuth apps here. We're going to go up here to new OAuth application, and we're going to do the same thing that we did for Google. So we're going to have starting point here, homepage URL, http://localhost 3000, and then the redirect URL, which if we just go back to here, oh, did I not name it? Oops, starting point here in the Google. Doesn't really need it, but you know, you can just name it whatever you want. So we're going to paste this here and do GitHub instead of Google, and then we're going to register the application. Now be careful with GitHub as compared to Google. You know, in Google you can just look back up your client IDs and your client secrets, but for GitHub, once it's generated, you can only see it during this session. If you accidentally refresh or, you know, left and came back, you're going to have to generate another client secret. It's a security thing, and so it's a pain in the butt, but security is always appreciated. So I'm going to do auth GitHub secret. So let's make sure that we have it all set up. We're going to generate a new client secret. We're going to need to authorize here. So let me grab my phone real quick, get into the GitHub app, type in my number, 24 here, and it should be good to go. There we go. So like it says, make sure to copy your new client secret now. You won't be able to see it again, because if we copy it, paste it into here, and if I refreshed by accident, oops, I only see the few characters at the end. You can see from FA down here, but we're missing the rest. You know, you'd have to generate a new client secret, delete the old one. It's a whole pain. So make sure that you have that all set up. And something that you might notice here, there's no way to add multiple of the URIs, redirect URIs. So GitHub's kind of lame in that way, in my opinion. You're gonna have to create a separate OAuth app for your test and your for your dev and for your prod. So if you have a production one, create one for the production with the production URL, and then this one's the development one, so you have your localhost 3000. Personally, I just created one OAuth named test, and I use the same one for every single application that's on the dev side. You're going to be updating your environment variables anyways when you deploy, and so, you know, you're not sharing those, and so, you know, you're keeping the ID and secret anyways. So, you know, being able to share that within the dev side, fine in my book, for at least if you're solo dev, and you know, if you're in production, obviously button everything down, make sure everything's secure. Each app has its own ID and client secret. All right, don't get lazy on the production side. Cool. So we finished that for GitHub and Google, and so let's see. Do we have to install anything? Let me just check. Doesn't look like it. And so let's create our database next. Okay, so I'm going to be striving to make things as easy as possible, but also, cheap and affordable for people who are building their own MVPs. I personally like to use NeonDB with Drizzle ORM. Neon has a free tier that's pretty generous, and Postgres is pretty easy to use, and so that's what I would recommend for a good beginner starting point for your own project. So let's jump right into getting it ready. So first of all, we're just gonna sign up or log in. Feel free to do, create your own account. And let me just log into mine real quick. And you can see I have a couple of my projects here. So all we need to do is create a new project, right? And so I have obviously paid for it. So, I have a lot more projects than you. I think I give 10 free projects. I don't actually remember. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm remembering it's at least one. And so, that's all that you'll need for your first project. So let's just create that, keep everything the same here by default. Don't futz with it if you don't know what you're doing. We have a URL here. Remember this URL. We're going to be needing it later. So Neon takes care of your databases and your online storage. Drizzle is a way for you to specify the schema of your database, so what the contents of your database will store, and how it works. And so let's see here. We are going to be, is it under guides? No, where is it? Oh, there it is. Get started. We are working with Neon. And so this is the documentation for Neon. If you were wondering how you get there, it's get started and then select NeonDB up here. Then you have a couple commands that we're going to have to install. So let's just get going with that. We're going to do paste this in, and then we're going to grab the second line. I think you can do it together, but I'm just going to do them separately to make sure that everything works. So we're getting Drizzle ORM. Oh, whoops. Oh, so they have that -- force issue with React 19. So we're just going to do -- force. That's good. That's why I did it separately, of course. So that it has installed. That's why it took a while. And then we're going to do, just in case, we're going to do -- force again. Here. Great. So it looks like at the time of recording, Drizzle has not updated it yet. They'll probably update it by the time I get this uploaded. If not, just do -- force. Everything will be fine. So next, it says set up a connection variable. So database URL. So we're going to add that to our environment local. And so we're just going to go in ABC order. And remember I said, remember this URL in your Neon console. We're going to just copy it. We're going to paste it in there. And so that's going to be a way for our application to know where our database is being stored. Awesome. Next, we're going to create a source/db. So inside of our source file, another reason why I told you to build a source folder. We're going to create a folder called db. And then inside of it, I know they say to do index.ts. I personally would rather if we just created a file called drizzle.ts. It's personal preference. Feel free to do what they ask you to do. But let's see here. That is, so we're just going to copy this part here because I don't think we need this. We're going to do this instead. So we're going to paste that in there. And I believe because we want to use Postgres, the code is different. So let's just see. Okay, that was why I was confused. We need to add a database adapter for our Auth.js. That's why there was some parts missing. And so we're going to use Drizzle ORM. So remember we did installation to authorization to get our OAuth. Now we're going to go under database. And we're going to grab Drizzle ORM here. So you might see some familiar commands here. But we need to install this piece right here at auth Drizzle adapter. To be completely honest, you can just copy this thing again and then paste it. And then just remember, let's see if we need force or not. We do. So we're just going to do the same thing with -- force at the end of it. Cool. We already have our Drizzle kit, so we don't need to do that. We've already set up our environment variables, so we don't need to worry about that. And so inside of our auth.ts, again, this is why we wanted to wait until the adapter was created. We are going to put it in its own separate file. So I'm going to create a different file here, and let's just collapse everything so it's easier for everyone to know where it goes. In the source folder, we're going to create auth.config.ts, and we're going to do export default adapter drizzle adapter. Oh no, drizzle adapter. And so I guess it's not gonna have a clean import. So drizzle adapter from at auth/drizzle adapter, and we're gonna pass in our DB. So we're going to need to export this here. We'll deal with that error in a second. We don't want this. I don't know why this imported. We're going to do DB pulled from, I know it says /drizzle, but let's just change that to @/db/drizzle there. Pull that up a little bit. We're going to leave this object empty for now while we deal with pages. So we need to specify what pages are going to be part of our sign-in process. So we're going to do error page. We'll just go back to the login. We'll handle errors on the login page. And then sign in, we're going to also do have it be on the login page. We're going to do providers, and it's going to be a list. We're going to have Google. So we're going to need to grab that. So import Google from NextAuth/providers/Google. And then we're going to need to do the same thing, but for GitHub. So GitHub from that, NextAuth/provider/GitHub. GitHub. Great. So we're just going to have both of those in there. And that should be it for this. So we're just going to say satisfies NextAuth config. So make sure that we have the right typing. And just separate everything out. We'll have these fields in just a second. And as you can see, GitHub Copilot's trying to autocomplete it. So let us create our first schema. So do they have that here? There it is, PostgreSQL, SQL. So that's what Neon is using. So make sure that we're using the same one. So there's a whole long bit here. A lot of this you probably don't need, but the thing that really matters to us is this users. Here we can see that we can just pull name, email, and a profile picture if they have one straight from their GitHub or their Google account. So we're just going to copy that. We're going to create a schema.ts file inside of our DB here. We'll paste it in, save everything. Check out if we have any errors. We have Postgres here. I don't think we need this bit here because we already have the DB inside of Drizzle here. So we can actually get rid of all these pieces. And then we can get rid of these imports that we don't need. Let me just make sure that we're not forgetting anything else. Nope, everything looks fine here. So we can save this, go into Drizzle, and instead of doing client like this, we're going to do, actually remove this object entirely. We're going to do SQL and comma, and actually let me do the import. So let's separate all these imports out. Import star as schema from /schema, and then we will provide an object with schema in it inside of here. Now let's see what seems to be the issue here. Neon process. What does this actually say? All right, let me check this real quick and be right back. All right, so I guess there's either a mistake in the documentation or some particular issue. I'm not 100% sure why. It is not neon-serverless. Instead, it's neon-http. That's the one that we want. And then you'll see that we cleared up that error inside of our configs now. Here. We can now add in the different bits of our schema and map them out. So we're going to have accounts table here be connected to accounts. And so we'll grab it from our schema here. We'll do @/db/schema. We're going to need sessions table, which is connected to sessions. Users table, connected to users. And lastly, verification tokens table, connected to verification tokens. All of these taken from the schema folder that we created. Great, we now have this config here. Now inside of here, we can pass in auth config. So let's just import that, import auth config from /auth config, and then just pass in auth config into here. Great, so we've fully connected everything. Now when we have a new user log in to our platform via OAuth, it'll be put into this Neon database. So we got a couple more setup things to do, but let's see here. We got to create our drizzle.config.ts file to enable us to make some schema changes. So let's just grab that code real quick. Let's see. Where would that code be from? So we have making changes to the database. Here it is, setup. So step 5 here. So we already created our tables using the stuff within Drizzle. So that was step 4. We need to create this Drizzle config file. So we're going to copy all of this bit here, I believe. Nope, actually, we're going to use some of it, but not all of it. So let's see here. I'm sorry, it's a little confusing. So we go to the absolute root of our project. So even outside of source here, we're going to click outside here. We're going to add a new file. We're going to do drizzle.config.ts here. We're going to grab config from .environment. This allows for us at this level to access our environment variables. Import define config. Okay, it's not auto importing. So from Drizzle kit, there we go. We're going to do config and then specify that the path to our environment variables is .env.local. We're going to do export default define config. It's going to take in an object. We're going to do db credentials. That's going to be a URL, and it's going to be process.environment.database URL. Make sure that you type it in absolutely correctly. Otherwise, it's going to have a lot of errors, and it's not going to be something that, appears on a squiggly line. So make sure, even if you want to copy paste this bit in, feel free to do so, just to be safe. We're going to need dialect, and that's going to be PostgreSQL. We're going to need to specify that our schema is inside of ./source/db/schema.ts. We're going to need strict to be true and verbose to be true, just for some debugging purposes there. Let's see, what's next on there? We completed step 5, and then we need to apply changes. So how I like to do it, just because I use npm run dev and run build a lot, I like to just alias the Drizzle commands to kind of work the same way. So inside of our package.json, underneath scripts here, we're just going to add in a new script. So instead of having to do this npx stuff, for me, it's just like a muscle memory. Like when I think of npx, I start thinking about like installing stuff. It's a personal preference thing. You can use these particular commands if you want. I just like to alias them with npm run so that it fits all of the other run stuff, like run build and run dev. But again, personal preference. Feel free to do this if you want. If not, you don't have to. If I can spell it correctly. Drizzle kit generate. And then we're going to do the same thing for migrate. And so we're going to have npx, thank you, autocomplete, npx drizzle migrate, no trailing commas allowed. So I'm just taking generate and migrate here and putting it under this alias. So now we can do npm run db generate. And so we've generated an extra drizzle file here with the corresponding SQL commands to be able to create the table. So instead of having to write all of this, which in my opinion is quite ugly, we can create something that looks similar to the rest of our TypeScript code, for our schema. So we can specify our schema in something that looks more TypeScript friendly, as opposed to writing it all out in SQL. And then later on, when we're writing in our code, we can reference tables in our schema, right, these PG tables, in a way that looks similar to our code. That's the power of Drizzle. Next, we're going to do npm run db migrate. And what this migration will do, if it succeeds, looks like it did. Now, if we go under our Neon console, we'll see that we have all of the tables that we created in our schema. So now we can store things that we want. Any user that logs in to our application, they will appear here. So let us move on to, are there any more steps? Let's just make sure. Inside of here, step 7, seed and query. Yep, we already got that. And okay, cool. So we are finished there. And let me see. We need to add in. There needs to be a redirect URL. So we need to specify that in our environment variables. It needs to be publicly accessible. So we're going to do next public API URL, and just for this test, we're going to do http://localhost 3000. Great. Cool. All right. So it looks like we had all of our database stuff, all of our authorization stuff all set up. Next, we just need to create the front end that allows for us to test it all out with our login and home screens. So let's get that going. Okay, next step, we are going to be going through and creating a way to be able to protect and redirect our pages, as well as showing us being able to log in. So those are a couple of different pieces. The first part that I want to build is just the authorization part. So a way to protect each of the pages, what we can do is create a folder called features. And this will be the place where if we create any way to modify our database in the future for a particular feature that goes into our application, we're going to stick it inside of our features folder here. And so I'm just going to create a subfolder here of auth. And inside of this auth, I'm going to create a utils file, which is going to store the function that will dictate how we protect our pages. And the code for it is pretty basic. What we're going to need is an interface called protect page options. And it's going to be an object of two things. We're going to have a authorized redirect URL, which will be an optional string. and then we're going to have an unauthorized redirect URL. And so we have two versions here, right, that we can pass into this protect page function that we're going to create here, protect page. It's going to be an asynchronous function, and it's going to take in this object, unauthorized redirect URL. There we go. And we're going to do some things in here, but I just wanted to explain first off that when we call this protect page within one of our pages, we are going to either receive a authorized redirect URL for pages where they're public, like a landing page, for example, and we'd want to redirect someone to a different page when they're logged in. The reverse of that is the unauthorized redirect URL. When someone is not logged in and they're on a page that requires a login, it's going to redirect that person to whatever this unauthorized redirect URL is. Now, if you can notice that these are optional, right? I put these question marks here, which denote that these fields are optional. And so by default, and by the way, here, this shouldn't be, I don't know why they did that part. It should just be that. Good. We're going to have some values by default. So let's see here. We're going to do const session is equal to await auth, and we're pulling this auth from the root level auth.ts here that we created here. So this auth field that we've extracted from NextAuth here, we're going to be using that to grab our current session. And then if that session exists, that means that we're logged in. And so if we don't have an unauth or an authorized redirect URL, then we should just return. That basically, if someone's logged in, but there's no redirect URL, then don't do anything. We're in the right place. Otherwise, we're going to call a redirect function here from next/navigation. So make sure that you import it from the right place here, next/navigation, and let me put that on top there. We're going to pass in our authorized redirect URL. Great. Now, there's something that we can do here on this side. So we can also do, like, if you did not pass in an unauthorized redirect URL and we're unauthorized, then don't do anything, right? And then we can just redirect and do the same thing here. Like, this is totally valid. Another way that you could do it is to force by default, because we specified in our auth config here that our sign-in is going to be at this /login. You could not do this line, go down to this line 17 here, and just do /login by default. Totally works if you want to do that. And I believe that either should work the same. So it's different behavior, right? So if your current session is unauthorized and you don't specify an unauthorized redirect URL, then it doesn't do anything. And that's if you wanted to allow for conditional renders on some of those related things. Like, hey, there's a public page here, but if it's authorized, we want to take them to a different place. But if they're unauthorized, they can stay in this place, right? A different type of, the one that we have here in this format, right? When you're unauthorized on any page that has a protect page function, it's going to take you to login as a default case unless you specify something different for unauthorized redirect URL. So I hope that that's clear, right? It's personal preference on how you want to architect this, right? I am going to not do it this way, but do it this way, just because in some cases, right, if you have pages where there's a public version and a private version that requires a login, right? You might want to switch from one to the other. And so I'm just going to use this case for now. But again, I've shown you two different ways to do it, depending on what works best for your particular situations. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing. Feel free to drop a comment if you felt like you needed more of an explanation, and I'll engage with you there. So cool, we have this protect page function that we can now go back and use inside of our different pages. So I'm going to actually remove this page.tsx because I don't need their starter code. And in fact, I'll clean up some of the things here. I don't need this fonts. We'll just keep using the favicon, globals.css. We've already changed this to have height of 100. Layout, we don't have these fonts anymore, so let's just get rid of them. Yep. So get rid of that, get rid of that. So we're just cleaning up here. I could change the name of this, right? Starting point and, created by G. Lee, right? That's me. Whatever. You can go and change all that stuff, clean it up a little bit. Then we're going to create a new folder, and we're going to call it a landing page there. So if you use these parentheses there, this route is ignored, right? And so at the app level, and if you use these parentheses here, it's not gonna need an extension like home or login to get there. So when you just do localhost 3000/, right, it's gonna access this page.tsx. So let's just create that real quick. Landing page is equal to return div landing page. And let me spin up the server real quick and just show you how that's working. Okay, cool. Let it load. While it is low, there seems to be a problem because I did not do export default. I always forget this. Landing page. There we go. So I believe it should work now. What is wrong here? It's not a React component. Let's see. Layout, children, body. It should go to this landing. Let me check this real quick and see what's wrong. Okay, as it turns out, I just had to restart the server. Great. So cool. There's the landing page that we created there. So cool. Let's see here. So we have our home page. Let me just check on that. And we have our login page here with a bunch of stuff in it. So let's see here. So what we're going to do is change these because this protect page function is async. We're going to have to call these pages asynchronous as well. So we're going to do await protect page. And I'm going to do @/features, not just /features. So it should be able to see that. I think that's just an IntelliSense issue, but let me see. Oh, is it because I forgot to? No, it's there. Features /auth/utils. Weird. Let me do this and then try to import it again. Oh, it's because I put features instead of app. There we go. We want to put it inside of source. My apologies there. So this will now need @/features. So please make sure that you make that change. Just move features outside of the app where I put it by accident. Put it into source. And now inside of this protect page, we need to provide that object. Now, remember that we don't ask for the strict authorization redirect URL or unauthorized redirect URL. Maybe you could change it from, instead of being optional, to being like string and null and then force someone to provide it. But, just for ease of use, I just like to put this object. So if you wanted to be a little bit more strict, you can remove this and just do with a pipe here, just do or null. And that'll force someone to have to specify, right? Calls an error. There's an error there now, right? Authorized redirect URL is missing. So then you'd have to provide that and say that it's null, right? So either way works. If you're want it to be absolutely safe or safer to use, then feel free to do that. I'm just going to remember every single time that I put it here, right? On a landing page, right? If we're unauthorized, we want to stay here so we don't pass in anything to the unauthorized side. But on the authorized side, I'm going to send us to home. On the login page here, we're going to do the same. So we're going to provide async here. We're going to do await protect page. And then if we are authorized, we're going to send ourselves to home. So if you go to the landing page, or you go to the login page, sorry, and you're authorized already, then there's no reason for you to be there. Just send you directly to home. And if you're unauthorized, then stay right here. So we don't need to actually provide anything to unauthorized. Let's see. So those two are essentially the same. And then on home, it's the opposite, right? Async await protect page. And then unauthorized redirect URL will be to /login. Okay, cool. So let's test this out and just see how this works. So if we go to this, right, we're on the landing page. If we go to home, it's going to punt us to the login because we're not authorized, right? Beautiful. Okay, so back in the code here, what we're going to do is we're going to be adding in the actual functions to sign in. Now, if we look, let me try to find it. Where was it? It's in the auth, this one. It's in this file. So we need the sign in handler here. And as it turns out that when it's grabbed from here, it's considered an event handler /hook. And so for us to be able to call an event handler /hook, we can't do it inside of an asynchronous function. That capability does not exist yet. And so we're going to have to push this or pull this, copy this bit of code here and stick it into its own client component. So what we're going to do here is inside of this login folder, and here, let me condense everything, go source, app, login, right? And inside this login folder, create a new folder here and do underscore components. When we preface a file name with underscore, it ignores it inside of the kind of app router. And so if we were to go to /login /underscore components, it doesn't exist because this underscore ignores it. Which also means that, you know, when we do like URL routes, we can't include something that is led with an underscore inside of our route. Which generally you're probably never ever going to do anyways, but just in case you were thinking about it, realize that you can't if you are using the app router, because this underscore notation is reserved for us to basically hide URLs, which is important because we're going to be creating a component here. We're going to be creating GitHub login.tsx, and we're going to create Google login.tsx. It's good because we're probably only going to use these two login components with this login page, so it would make sense to put it in the greater shared components folder because we're probably only going to use this once. And by putting these inside of this underscore components folder, we're not going to accidentally go to login /GitHub login and then, you know, have something weird happen because these aren't pages. You know, they're going to be hidden because they're inside of underscore components. So what we're going to do is just do export const GitHub login here. I'm going to do there, parentheses, and we're just going to grab this bit out. So we're just going to control exit and paste it into here. We're going to reformat this to make it look nice, and then we're going to re-import everything. Button, is this going to work? Yep. FA from React icons, and what we're going to do, just reformat this a little bit. So just to show you that it needed to be in a client component, we're just going to do this real quick. On click right here, and we're going to do sign in. Whoops, not from @/auth. So make sure that you're grabbing this from NextAuth /React. So we're going to have to grab this manually because it's not showing. So we're going to need sign in from NextAuth /React. There we go. Okay, and to complete the sign in function here, we're going to be adding in GitHub Great, don't need to import that particular GitHub. Let's add it back into here. GitHub login. Now we're going to see a error. I'm just going to let you know that ahead of time. And as you can see here, yep, event handlers cannot be passed to a client component props from this async. It's basically what that means. To fix that, we just need to add in use client on the top here. And when I save that, you can see it works. So we're going to do the same thing for Google. Okay, so an easy way that we could do this is to just copy paste this entire bit here, stick it into the Google login, then replace all of the GitHub stuff with Google. So we're going to do FA Google here, and then copy this, paste this here, write Google here, and then here, and let's just Control F, make sure there's no GitHub in here. There is not. So we're going to save this. We're going to remove this bit here and add in our Google login component. Great. So let's test this out real quick, make sure that everything functions. So we're going to go to GitHub here. There's a little login page here. We're going to authorize myself and be navigated, I believe, to the home screen. There we go. Awesome. Now, we don't have a sign in, sign out button yet. There's a way for us to be able to do that. We can do API/auth/sign out, and we're going to go out to this custom sign up page. So if a user was somehow to type in this, they'd get to here too. You can protect it if you want. It's kind of an advanced thing. Most people are probably not going to type this in to just sign out. It's honestly not a really big deal for like our protected behavior to need to like protect this, but you know, this is just a way for while you're debugging for us to sign out, right? We know that we're signed out because if we go to home, we get put back to login. And if we try the Google side now, I'm just going to log in with my personal email. Oh, seems to be an error on the Google side. Let me check that out. I see what the issue is. So because I already logged in with GitHub, my personal email is already being used on the GitHub side. So we're going to have to use a different email. Here, I'll just use my work email. And you can see we're now able to log in. So again, it's just because you're not able to use your email twice for different authorization services. There are ways to get around it. I think it falls outside of the scope of this tutorial. Go into the Auth.js documentation if you want to be able to fix that. Personally, I don't think that's going to come up much, but if you want to fix it, it's in the Auth.js documentations. And if you really want to make sure that that doesn't happen, you can also look into working with JWT. Those will be in some of my other tutorials, JWT tokens. And so, falls kind of outside of the scope of this tutorial, but if you are really interested in doing that, that's where you can fix that. So let's go back to the sign out no, I think that we're pretty much done here. Everything seems to be functioning a-okay. All the logins are done. Pages are protected. And actually, let me just show real quick. If we go into Neon, the console, and go into the starting point project that we created, go into our tables, and look at users, you can see me logging in with GitHub, and you can kind of also see it, Google being my work email and GitHub being my personal email. You can see that it's now stored within our database, so later on if we need to grab user details, we can do so. We can grab this from our users table stored within our database. Great. Well, let's actually be able to pull some stuff from the database and get some API routes going, because I think that it's nice to have a database, obviously, but it's not very useful unless you're able to do stuff with it. So let's move on to that.